Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the DevFacto webinar series. Today's presentation is Data Analytics, 10 Smart and Simple Ways to Get Started, and it's presented by DevFacto Senior Consultant, Jason Medwid. My name is Laura Conserata. I'm the Marketing Manager here at DevFacto, and I will be the host for today. Before we get started, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. Our presentation today is going to run for approximately 45 minutes, and will be followed by a question and answer period. If you have any questions, please direct them to the please direct message them to me or enter them into the chat box that's in your GoToWebinar interface. And we'll make sure we get to as many as we can at the end of the presentation. Today's presentation will be recorded and we'll be making it available on our DevFacto YouTube channel. And as always, if you have any other questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at any time via our website at devfacto.com. So that's it for me for now. Let's get this thing started, and Jason, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everybody. I'm Jason Medwid. I'm Senior Consultant at DevFacto Technologies. I've been in IT for 20 years now, and since 2003, I've been putting a big focus on business intelligence and analytics. I may look like I just pulled an all-nighter in that picture, but I can assure you I'm full of vim and vigor to deliver this content today. I just wanted to, before we get going on the 10 tips, I just wanted to cover a bit in an introduction. So the intended audience for this webinar is people on the business side of things. We're not going to get too technical here. I basically want to give you 10 areas to get you thinking about analytics, 10 important things you'll need to think about as you're planning a move for your organization into data analytics. Each area could be its own webinar at the very least. So for now, we just want to get you set up by seeing where you can start asking the right questions in your organizations and how to go about getting the answers. I think it'd be useful here to just do a little bit of clarification around some terminology, especially around the concepts of reporting versus business intelligence and versus analytics. They're obviously tightly related topics, and I'll probably refer to all three during the course of the webinar. For now, I'd just like to quickly highlight what I mean by each of them before we start getting into the 10 tips. I'm using reporting here as a very broad term to refer to all the activity related around the way data is consumed in an organization. Mostly in reports, spreadsheets, that kind of stuff. Whatever your organization is doing with data, it falls under the term reporting. Business intelligence, on the other hand, refers to taking a methodological approach to this data from all its various sources in order to bring it all together. So we want to take the seething mass of data and make it understandable and usable by business users. It's about cleaning that data up, ironing out the ambiguities, bringing consistency to it, structuring it so that a human can use it as opposed to a machine, and making it available through a variety of methods. Business intelligence is about doing exactly what you need to do to the data to allow your organization to realize the value that's bound up in it. Think of it as data plumbing. Business intelligence gets you clean data from the tap. Analytics now is what you do once you have that data. Analytics means using data to gain a better understanding of how your organization is working, to create insight, to see something new, to make a new connection, and of course, to drive decision-making. The clear picture you have of how your organization is performing and what factors affect it, whether for good or bad, the better. Your focus is on learning something from the data. In practical terms, this means taking data and performing calculations to produce meaningful results, metrics, patterns, correlations. You will be able to recognize a previously unseen relationship between elements in your business. Analytics makes you able to make decisions based on facts in the data that you can see with your own eyes. The results of analytics can be used to assess the state of your organization, identify relationships, and start making predictions about performance and outcomes. To get to this state takes groundwork. And the nature of this groundwork is what these 10 tips are going to be about. And one last point before we get there, just want to say something about the fact that underlying all these tips is the idea of taking an iterative approach to analytics. So the idea here is that you break a large problem down into smaller pieces and tackle those. Get an idea, test it out, demonstrate the worth of it, go back and make it better, and so on. as opposed to the classic Big Bang approach, where something big like analytics would be approached through a massive project with tons of people, tons of time, tons of money. Those kind of things don't usually turn out so well. We don't want to do things that way. So when we talk about doing any work, we mean taking an iterative approach to it. Now on to the tips. We'll see that these 10 tips are not isolated. They're all related and rely on each other. It would be difficult to begin work in one of these areas and not have it touch on the others. But that's okay. That's where this iterative approach comes in. Instead of freezing us, we're empowered with a flexible approach. We can pick a place to start, build it out, see if it's good, then keep growing it. Tip number 1, understand where you are. What I specifically mean here is be realistic about the current state of analytics in your organization. You want to define your starting point. You want to figure out where you stand. What are you doing today? So what processes are happening around this data? Who is doing it? Who in your organization uses it? Who's putting it together? And with what? What tools are they using? This means more than just, I basically know what's going on. We have reports, people use them, we're good. Most likely analytics in some form is already occurring. Somebody is using some data for something, even if it's simply canned operational reports that run out of an application or individual users pulling data together on their own. Developing a holistic, high-level understanding of all this data and reporting activity is an important first step that you need to do before you can start moving forward with analytics. You need to understand where you are. Once you have a clear baseline or a starting point, you'll be able to begin your analytics journey on a firm footing. You want to be rigorous when you do this. You want to apply some dedicated analytic effort to it. How many data sources? How many systems are we talking about? What's this data being used for? Do we use data from outside our own systems? How is it handled? How much manual effort is involved? How are we testing it? And so on. Lots of questions will begin appearing once you start thinking this way. Now let's talk about some specific activities you can do to start getting these questions answered. I'll indicate some general methods or areas of investigation. You'll have a lot of flexibility on how you would apply this to your own organization. What makes sense to you will depend on your own context. Now, the first one is conduct business and IT stakeholder workshops and interviews. Think of these as information gathering sessions. Sit face-to-face with the people who use or work with the data. Find out what's important to them, what their pain points are, what they'd like to have, but they currently don't. Engaging with stakeholders from across the organization can provide a lot of details quickly from which you can build a picture of your current state. They'll tell you what the important stuff is. They'll tell you what's not being used. They'll tell you what the current problems are. Just ask them. You want to conduct analysis of your technical architecture and infrastructure. You want any new analytics initiative, big or small, to be built on a stable foundation. The aim of the technical architecture analysis at this stage isn't to justify or plan a big infrastructure project involving upgrading or replacing servers, switching your technology stack, whatever. Instead, you want to focus on the technical environment you have today and figure out which elements or components you should keep using and which you shouldn't as you move forward. You'll want to ask questions like, and this is a fundamental one, have certain technologies already been identified as standards for use in your organization, in which case you might be stuck with them, at least for now. Are we behind 2 or 3 versions on certain technologies? Are these likely to be replaced at some point? Are we moving to the cloud somewhere down the road, or are we staying on-prem? And here's a good one. Do we already have a long-term architecture plan where these questions have been answered? Your approach to the technology aspects of analytics should align to overall corporate goals. You'll make your life much easier if it does, especially in terms of funding and support. Now, analyzing data sources. Here I'm talking about getting a sense of what kind of shape your data is in today. How clean is it? How complete is it? How consistent? How difficult is it to work with? Are certain areas of the organization better than others? When it comes to analytics, it doesn't get more fundamental than this. Doing analytics on data that has quality issues that you don't know about is ill-advised. That cliche actually is applicable here, garbage in, garbage out. Bad data being fed into a good analytics engine will give you bad results every time. You want to analyze your reporting processes. Many organizations have reports that involve manual effort to prepare, ranging from stitching different data sets together in Excel, cleaning it up, even correcting values by hand. You need to understand the trials and travails of your data, what it goes through before it's presented to your users. Doing this will show you which areas of reporting that you should have confidence in and which have issues that you need to address. Now, this is just scratching the surface. There are lots of other areas such as security and quality assurance that you'll also want to explore. But keep in mind, this doesn't have to turn into a forensic audit. You want to do a survey in each of these areas, get a high-level view of the way things currently work, find the hotspots and dig in there. The more you do this, the more you set yourself up to start off on the right foot. And the more the analytics that you end up creating will be trusted and used by the organization. Number 2, don't be driven by tools. What does it mean to be driven by tools? Essentially, it means making the tools of your focus, making your tools the focus at the expense of your analytics goals. In other words, making decisions around analytics based on the state or capabilities of your current tool set, instead of the kinds of insight you're trying to deliver to your organization. Your focus is on the tools you have instead of what you want to do with them. You're probably thinking, well, yeah, why would you do that? But it's actually surprisingly common. Here are some examples. Everything's in Excel because that's what people are used to. We don't need anything else. Or we just rolled out a visualization tool. It's way better than Excel, so now all the reporting has to be done with vizzes now. Or I just saw a demo for the latest version of Oracle. It looks amazing. We got to switch to it. These statements are examples of when you focus on the how, you lose sight of the why. When you lose sight of the goal of analytics, why you're messing around with all this data in the first place, and become focused on your tools, you're asking for trouble. And it usually comes in the form of wasted time and money. You end up spending time and money on delivering things that don't meet the needs of your organization. You want to extract as much business value as you can from your data. Your orientation should be, I need to do something. So what tools should I use? Not, I have a tool, what should I do with it? Let's talk about an example. Say you're rolling out a self-serve, you have a self-serve initiative and you want to roll out self-serve reporting to your users. Users will have access to all the data they need. They'll have a tool to create their own reports. This is going to be awesome. It's easy to get excited by the possibilities of these kinds of tools. Imagine if our users could just build their own reports. That'd sure take the strain off IT. Let's pick a tool and let's get going. The problem here is that the tool itself is being treated as the answer to the problems. If what you're trying to do is get the data into the hands of users who know it best so they can gain their own answers and insight, merely making the tool available to them isn't enough. If it was, we wouldn't have 10 points to talk about here. Rolling out a reporting tool won't answer questions like, what will the users be creating? Where will this data come from? How is this data being pulled together? Is everybody calculating profitability the same way? How do we make reports made by an individual available across the organization? What about security? How do these things get tested anyway? You need to be able to answer questions like these. Focus on supporting business priorities. You have to get clarity in business terms of what kind of uses analytics will be put to. Hopefully something along the lines of answering key business questions, delivering insights, and driving positive change in the organization. You're enabling business capabilities, not technological ones. The business should be able to see how the business is performing, identify successes and challenges, make new connections. You want the business understanding from both business areas and in IT. You want that business understanding driving the decision making. Tools play an important role, but they shouldn't be the driver. Data and tools are the means, not the ends. So we're going to stay with tools for one more tip here and make a related point. We just got finished talking about keeping focused with what you're trying to do with your tools rather than just on the tools themselves. But the fact is we're going to have to use tools of some kind, which leads us to start with the tools you do have. You can probably do a lot already. Now, in the first tip, we talked about coming to grips with what your current state is. And as part of that, you need to understand what tools you do currently have and what they're being used for. Even if you think you don't have much going on in the analytics area, there's a good chance you're wrong. The data is being used for something. You already have operational systems. They're storing data. Maybe they're built with a technology like Microsoft or Oracle, which means you likely have access to a number of powerful data tools already. Utilize these. Utilize what you have, whatever it is. Don't make cutting a check the first thing you do. Your first step shouldn't be, okay, we got to get going on analytics. How much does Oracle OBI EE cost? Not that that isn't a great product, of course. And you may end up needing to move in that direction. You may end up needing to cut that check at some point. But how would you know when it's time to do so? It probably shouldn't be your starting point. You want to identify gaps in your tool sets based on actual needs. In other words, make that move, cut that check, supplement the tool set based on identified and proven need as opposed to assumed or anticipated need. For example, let's say your business runs a number of warehouses and your senior management has the need to be able to view up-to-date metrics on the performance of these warehouses while meeting with clients. In this case, you can be very specific about what should be in these reports, the results, the metrics, the filtering rules, and so on, and how they should be accessed. In front of clients, for example, you probably want to be able to answer questions quickly and easily. In this case, you can come up with a detailed profile of what you need your tools to be able to do. This kind of gap analysis will give you a firm footing on which to base your data tool strategy. Now contrast this with another scenario. A sales team from a big time vendor comes in and gives a demo on the latest version of their tool stack to senior management. Lots of cool new features, twice the number of visualization types compared to the last version. It looks awesome. But without knowing what you would use these new features for specifically in business terms, investing in this set of tools based on that might be nice if we could, or wonder if we could use that, that's probably unnecessary. In practical terms, when you start looking at providing data analytics in the organization, you'll probably find that access to enough tools isn't the problem, at least initially. Use what you've got. Identify the gaps specifically in terms of what you're trying to do business-wise. Then come up with a strategy to fill the gaps. You probably already have what you need to get started. Tip number 4 is about roles. Enabling data analytics is not a one-person job. You're going to need a team of people to do it. To organize this team, you need to identify what kinds of activities each person should be performing and what areas they're responsible for. Everyone who's working in data and analytics needs to understand the part they play within the big picture. Who do you need to achieve your initial analytics goals? What should they be doing? What kind of people are we going to need going forward as the range of our data analytics grows? Answering questions like these and turning the answers into a list of roles is crucial for you to be able to start turning your ideas for analytics into action. Aside from the obvious benefits of being able to staff a team fully and efficiently, a key benefit to being clear on roles right up front is when people are put into clearly defined roles, they're more likely to be successful, as expectations on them and the areas they're responsible for are defined and understood by everyone. Lack of clarity in this area can generate a lot of noise, duplicated effort, drop balls, frustration, i.e. inefficiency. When people understand what pieces of work they own, a sense of ownership and pride kicks in. The quality of the work goes up. So defined roles are a good thing. And there are lots of resources available that list the various roles that make up a business intelligence or a data analytics team, such as data architect, data modeler, ETL developer. But telling a person they're a data architect and giving them the dictionary definition isn't going to set them up for their role. These canned definitions are only the first step in defining the roles. To make them applicable to you, you have to define the roles in terms of your own organization. You need to determine what each role should be responsible for in the context of your organization. What business areas do they work in or with? Who do they report to? Who reports to them? What are their specific tasks? It's translating the canned definition of the role into specifics that will identify areas of responsibility for each role and maps these roles into the organization's overall reporting structure. What specific things will a person in this role be doing? How do these roles relate to each other here at our organization? There are many specifics relating to how each organization operates that can impact the definition of these roles. Technology choices, overall information management strategy, specifics of how HR works, and so on. Another thing to note is that a given person can be obviously in more than one role. The roles and the bodies required do not have to be one-to-one. At some point, you want to specifically decide which specific human person is doing what. Which role or roles are they assuming? In the process of determining this, know when to supplement. We haven't talked about resourcing yet, but this is a really key area. To get the work done, you need the people. You want to understand what your current resources are capable of, what their skill sets are. And you want to be able to recognize the gaps in their skill sets and determine how to address them. Many organizations don't have the full range of skills necessary to set up a BI or a data analytics practice. It's important to get clarity about what bases your organization has covered and which you need help with. There are different ways to get this help. For example, you can supplement your team by bringing in contractors or by using outside expertise and resources by partnering with a consulting firm. Or you may have skill set gaps that are addressable simply through training. At the end of the day, your goal is to have resources in clearly defined roles that can successfully deliver analytics to your organization. Tip number 5 is about metrics. Metrics are the ways you measure how your organization is performing, the quantifiable terms in which you determine whether an organization is meeting its goals and how efficient its processes are in making this happen. How much money did we make? How many times did we deliver a service? On average, how long do certain kinds of activity take? Providing your organization with a set of metrics will be a key goal for any analytics initiative. At the basic level, key metrics can be simple to determine, and you're probably tracking some of them already, but you need the big picture. How much money did we spend or earn? How many times did something happen? An order was placed, a call came in, an employee took training. There are probably all kinds of things being measured across your organization right now. The point here is that you want to be able to view these holistically. You need to see the big picture. You want to be able to group these metrics together, identify commonalities, and crucially, you need consistent definitions that apply across the business. You want to start getting a picture of the metrics as a whole. From this, you can determine which are the key indicators crucial to the organization, which are the ones that need cleaning up, standardization, redefinition, and which are just not used anymore and can be retired. We're kind of making a callback here to the first tip, developing a current state picture of the metrics now that you're currently using will allow you to begin getting them standardized and moving them forward iteratively, growing and enhancing them to give ever better information and insights to your business. The power of data to generate insights is amazing, and it's definitely exciting to see insights reveal something that leads to an organization getting better at doing its work. But it's a mistake to view these insights as somehow just lying dormant in the data. As we said before, it's not a question of making the data available through a tool and turning it loose on your data. Data is not like a bag of kernels that all you have to simply do is apply heat and glorious popcorn bursts forth. You're going to have to get specific about what you're trying to measure. It's important for data exploration to have rigor. Often, when a business area, for example, says, we don't really know what our questions are, we just want to be able to play around with the data. The solution to this is not to drop a load of data on them and leave them to it. The business area's request is valid, obviously, but it indicates that they are at an early stage in their analytics journey. They need to explore the data in order to generate ideas about where analytics go. They need to define their metrics. Recognize this situation. You'll want to support and guide this. Arriving at specific metrics and indicating how they will drive the organization's decision-making should be the goal of this kind of exercise. It isn't enough to dump data on a business area and turn them loose. We have to get rigorous. Get them in the mindset of relating the data to the actual business processes responsible for it from the beginning. Once again, we'll return to the idea of iteration. See what your organization is currently measuring and use that as your starting point. Make these metrics available and improve, change, enhance them iteratively. Improve a business process based on a metric, and then use the metric to measure the effectiveness of that change. Useful metrics defined accurately can have a huge impact on your organization's decision-making ability. Number 6, start setting the rules of the road. As you might guess, we're talking about data governance here. And we have to, because of something very important. It's a fact that without sufficient involvement from both business and IT, a data analytics effort won't succeed. The basic reason for that is this. IT needs to provide capabilities and build them out correctly. Business needs to provide the understanding of the business context in which these analytics would be defined and used. As we'll discuss later, partnership must exist between business and IT for data analytics to be successful. And it's in the governance framework that the nature of this partnership is defined. This is a huge topic, obviously, and I don't have room to go into it in any great depth, but I want to here zoom in on that first word, start. A successful data governance framework is iterative, flexible, responsive. It doesn't have to exist as a full-scale, enterprise-wide, comprehensive framework before you can do any data analytics efforts. An iterative approach, again, is key to success here. You can begin building out your data governance framework by beginning where you are. Leverage what currently exists in your organization. Most organizations will already have some form of information management, if not data management, policy and procedures in place. So with data governance, we want to have a set of rules and procedures to guide or govern the data. Rules and standards around its quality, its definitions, who can see it, stuff like that. As much as possible, you want your data governance framework to align with previously defined policies and procedures in your organization, such as those in information management. And mostly that would deal with stuff like security, data retention, stuff like that. But apart from this corporate policy alignment stuff, the main reason we need a data governance framework in the first place is that you want all your data and the way it's used to be consistent, correct, and managed. An implemented data governance framework is where the rubber meets the road. It's where we go about making this happen. So what do you need to start this, and what do you need to grow it? A data governance framework has a lot of different aspects. We've previously talked about roles and metrics, and these would obviously be key areas. But there are other areas as well. Prioritization of analytics initiatives, so defining what kinds of work you should be doing and in what order. Security, data availability, the definition of key business metrics. And of course, we'd have to have a group or body tasked with defining and implementing this framework. As we'll see in a later tip, an efficient data governance framework is the embodiment of a partnership between business and IT. Such a framework can ensure that the interests from across the business are represented. Now, defining such a structure can be daunting, but, and this is the key point, the lack of a fully realized framework is no impediment to starting with data analytics. Define a framework in terms of people, roles, and process that is sufficient to get you started. If value is realized from these initial efforts, keep going, expand the initiatives, involve more users, more business areas, enhance and expand the framework iteratively to support this growing and evolving solution. Now, tip number 7 is going to put some emphasis on one specific area of this. You want to be secure from the start. This one's simple. Don't leave security until last. Trying to shoehorn in a security implementation while you're in the middle of user acceptance testing is a horrible idea. And it's not as though the security requirements will only reveal themselves after this testing has begun. You can save yourself a lot of pain and frustration by making security a priority from day one. And when you start looking at this at day one, define your security requirements in business terms. Define a security model in terms that relate to the business. Determine the levels of access and how they apply to each business area and their data. Get a picture of what you'll need to implement together before you start talking in terms of Active Directory or LDAP groups. The ultimate goal of this is to develop a definition of security that all analytics efforts will refer to. You don't want a setup that grows less and less consistent over time because you have to keep coding in little exceptions to handle cases that you didn't have to handle previously. But yet again, we begin where we are. Define a security structure that will support your current analytics efforts and is able to be enhanced and refined to meet future needs. So there's a balancing act here, being comprehensive versus being adaptable. Sounds like a mouthful, but it's really just restating what we just said. You want to have enough of the long-term, high-level security requirements identified up front. For example, only certain people should see certain rows, or we're going to need to open this set of data up to external users at some point down the road. But you also want to be able to implement something flexible and able to adapt to change, to be able to handle new situations and requirements that weren't present initially. Defining a model that's complete and correct for now and all time would be very difficult. You want something that covers your bases today and can cover new bases as they come up. In the case of security, this usually means becoming more broadly applied across the business and becoming more finely grained. So wider coverage, greater detail. Here again, the way to meet this challenge is to take an iterative approach. Here's a quick example. Say when you first start out, you'll usually need to implement some kind of public versus private access. You know, for this data, it's fine for everyone across the company to access it, but for these specific reports, they're going to have to be people in finance only. Once implemented, these kind of requirements have a habit of becoming more specific. For example, open to everyone can end up meaning open to everyone in the company versus open to everyone in the public at large as well. Or people in finance only now means for these specific reports, only senior managers in finance and HR should be able to see them. These kind of requirements will arise as analytics starts being built out. Architecting a flexible, extensible security model means you'll be able to meet these requirements as they arise. So this raises a new issue, the idea of analytics capabilities being built out. Let's talk a little bit about how this building out is achieved. With point number 8, pick a starting point, sketch a roadmap. Hopefully you're convinced of the idea of the validity of approaching data analytics iteratively. And all these iterative efforts require us to pick a starting point. You have a big task ahead of you, so break off a piece and get working on that. Now, a number of possible starting pieces will likely present themselves to you while you're doing the current state analysis we talked about earlier. Once it becomes known in the organization that dedicated analytics work is starting up, you're going to have ideas and possibilities coming at you. To sort through these possibilities, it's key that you recognize the low-hanging fruit. Collect these candidate ideas while talking to the business areas. Make a point of meeting with each of them. Ask them what they're doing today for reporting. Where are their pain points? What would they like to be able to do that they can't today? Spend some time assessing these ideas, these candidates, with some high-level analysis. How complicated are the processes required to bring this set of data together today? How important is this report or data set to the organization? You want to identify candidates that represent a low complexity effort that would yield high business value. Pick a couple of candidates from each business area and conduct a deep dive. Get in there and get some detail around why these reports are difficult to produce, or why they're not currently being done even, why it's an issue. Understand the processes behind them. Identify the areas of improvement. See where this manual data cleansing is happening, where the data sets are being stitched together, the amount of time all this stuff takes. You want to then assess these candidates in terms of corporate goals. How important are they to the organization relative to each other? Is there more attention on one business? And there are other factors that can influence this as well, such as is there more attention being paid to one business area versus another right now? Has there been a change in the way finance has had to do business because of you just implemented a brand new ERP? Is there a renewed focus on the effectiveness of marketing this year? These kinds of considerations will influence figuring out which piece or pieces to start with. Start building a roadmap out of these candidates. The workshops and interviews you conduct with the business will yield you a ton of gold, and I mean that basically literally. You'll uncover many places business value could be delivered by data analytics. The kind of information gathering sessions mentioned earlier are incubators for great ideas and insights. You'll want to rank the candidates you identify by difficulty and business value. So think of a graph divided into quadrants. The top right quadrant is the easy to do, high value stuff. And the bottom left is the tough to do, low value stuff. From this, you can sketch out a roadmap. Put these pieces in some kind of order. Find the high value, low complexity, low hanging fruit and plan to do that first. Then on the basis of that, identify the more challenging items. Balance their complexity against the potential value they would yield. A given initiative may appear tough to deliver, but if it was, it could transform your organization. Something like that would likely be worth the effort. It's this kind of bottom-up, value-driven creation of a roadmap that your analytics governance framework should support and promote. It's precisely this way that it enables you to develop the big picture for your organization, of your organization's goals for analytics. Which areas, which questions, which capabilities. Value can be demonstrated sooner than you think. Do something bite-sized, prove out the approach, make it better, build the plan. We've got 2 tips left, and they both deal with growth. You want to, tip number 9 is grow the business IT partnership. Underlying the previous points has been a theme. A successful data analytics initiative is the result of a strong partnership between business and IT. This is crucial. Strong business sponsorship is necessary to establish the priority of analytics in your organization and to secure resourcing, funding, and time, and to keep analytics as an organizational priority long term. The various business areas bring their knowledge of the work, the processes, the full context of the organization, and IT brings its technical methodologies and expertise. All of these elements are necessary for successful data analytics. Emphasize to everyone in the organization that analytics is the responsibility of both business and IT. Call it out that we need to work together on this. The Analytics Steering Committee should enshrine it in a mission statement. Analytics requires commitments from both the business and IT. You don't want situations where business says, that's IT's problem, or IT spending its time working with data that it doesn't fully understand business-wise. You want ongoing collaboration throughout all the phases. Gone are the days when IT would gather requirements, then say goodbye to the business for 6 months, while the gears of the IT factory churned until finally a new product was presented for user consideration during user acceptance testing. Collaboration, iteration, every step of the way. One thing you can do today is see how this idea of a partnership is currently being realized in your organization. Look for this partnership in your current processes today. There's a simple way to check. Here's an example of a simple way to check it. How does user acceptance testing currently work for reporting? Either for reporting or for IT work in general. Does the business and your technical people work together to make sure that a data product, report, whatever, is complete and correct, that it meets a need? Or does IT throw it over the fence, the testing? Does IT throw the testing over the fence, leave the business to its own devices and wait for reported bugs to come in? Does testing drag on and on because requirements keep changing? Or does testing keep getting put off because the business doesn't have time for it? If any of this rings a bell, it indicates an opportunity to get this partnership idea circulating more strongly in your organization, even apart from any specific analytics initiative. Look for places to plant this seed. The resulting fruit will be tasty indeed. And finally, our last point. Number 10, you want to grow the culture. When it comes to how an organization uses its data and the value it realizes from it, you want this partnership between the business and IT to be reflected throughout the organization, not just in specific stakeholders actively involved in BI or analytics. Ideally, you'll have some explicitly stated mandate or vision statement created by the analytics or BI or the steering committee, whoever they are. Something along the lines of, this initiative is dedicated to a business IT partnership whose goal for analytics is to provide the organization with the answers they require and the insights they need to be able to successfully support decision-making, generate insight, improve the business, move the business forward. This kind of clear statement of an all-encompassing goal emphasizes that for analytics to work in the organization, everyone has to be rowing in the same direction. You want the message to be repeated over and over and for it to be reflected in the way people work together. So how do we do that? You want to foster collaboration and communication. Promote the actual method by which analytics initiatives are undertaken, specifically the instilling of collaboration throughout all steps of this process, from the initial idea, throughout the prototyping, the proving out of the idea, building out of it to get it ready for testing, to when it goes into production, and then it goes into production and becomes widely available, and then revisiting it to make improvements. Make how this process works clear to everyone. Show people what roles they could possibly play in this process. Make it clear that everyone has a stake in the success of analytics. Communicate that the focus of analytics is on exploration, continuous improvement, value, not on following rigid processes. If anyone has an idea, they should be empowered to bring it forward, to get the support they need, to have the idea tested out, to see if it could deliver value to the organization. The more people perceive the value in this kind of collaborative work, the more they'll engage in it. Now, this kind of attitude can represent a major culture change for an organization. And an effective communication strategy is a key way to affect this kind of change. Share the achievements and the challenges of the people working in analytics with the organization at large. Host lunch and learns. Set up regular office hours for business users to come and get support from an IT resource. They could take their ideas in and get help fleshing them out into a prototype, for example. Maybe they're looking to add data to an existing report or a dashboard that they've been working on the side. It's these kind of things that keep analytics in the air, at the front of people's minds, and over time influences the organization's culture as a whole. So those are the 10 tips. I hope they've given you some food for thought and help you start being able to chart a course for analytics in your organization. Now, we've prepared a questionnaire based on all the material covered here. Laura's going to put the link in the chat box. So please take a few minutes and fill it out. It won't take long, and it will really help emphasize the points that we made during the webinar. And it'll help you start applying these principles specifically to your organization.
Okay, well, it seems like that's it for now, so maybe we'll just leave it there. If you have any other questions following this, please reach out to us. Jason or I or whoever else at DeFacto are more than happy to help you out. You can reach us anytime via our website, defacto.com. And we also invite you to keep an eye for the recorded version of this presentation. It'll be made available on our YouTube channel. We'll also be following up with everyone here to share a copy of that recorded presentation, as well as the link for the self-assessment in an email the next day or two. Thanks again for joining us this afternoon. Thank you very much, Jason, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thanks.